Hello, my friends. So you want to talk about Halloween? Candy, ghosts, and trick-or-treating and stuff? Um, a lot of people do have questions about Halloween, like, wait a minute, like, why do we celebrate this? And I think it's a fair question. But typically, if you were like sitting across from me at a coffee table, I would start to ask you more and more questions. Like, why are you asking me these things? What are you worried about? What are your real fears or insecurities, or what's really going on? What's the question behind your question? See, a lot of times what I see in people's faith and their conclusions that they come to, they're really, really fear-based questions. Like, you're worried if you don't have this right stance or this right thing that God's gonna like zap you and be really, really upset with you. And what I've found in my relationship with God and in reading the scriptures is seeing that it's just not really like that. I think there are some really clear times where he's like, do this, don't do that. But with things like Halloween, should we celebrate it? I like to approach it from this perspective of like, man, I don't want to make a decision based on fear. And two, yeah, let's do some research. Let's look at the history of it. And then, can we use it for good? Is it so evil that we just want to keep it at arm's length, or can we engage with it, ask good and healthy questions, and maybe it makes your faith even go deeper, and maybe you could be a light to the world. And so those are things that I would talk with you about if you were sitting across the table from me. But I'm talking to lots of people right now, so I'm just going to try to approach this generally. So one is, I've done some of the history behind it, and history is hard. You can read it from different slants and angles. But basically the way I see it is that Halloween, in the history of it, it does have some Christian historically it has Christian roots, in that it started as All Saints Day, where early Christians would celebrate the deep faith of those who had gone before them, who became martyrs. So they said, look, they were willing to die for Jesus and for the name of Jesus. They laid it all out there. Let's celebrate them. And that was All Saints Day. And yes, at the same time, as it happens in culture, anthropologically speaking, this happens all the time, that things come together and morph. And so you also had a whole bunch of pagans who believed in ghosts and people coming back from the dead. And so over time, the two got conflated a lot. And so we as Christians are left in 2017 wondering, how do we engage with this now? Has some Christian roots and also some questionable stuff. So for me, what I like to do is I engage with it and I have fun with it. No, I'm not going to go worship Satan or anything like that, but I'm also not going to run from it either. Like, I heard one person put it this way when it comes to this kind of stuff, like, my faith isn't that fragile that I have to really worry about that. And then what I would say is, a lot of times people ask this kind of thing, and what they want to do is like build as many safeguards and rules as possible to keep them from even possibly breaking a commandment of God. And without trying to sound too harsh, like that's what the Pharisees did 2,000 years ago. And Jesus like busted open the gates and was like, no, it's not about making sure you follow all these precise rules. Like this one time they tried to bust him on the Sabbath, and they were like, hey, your disciples are eating the grain or whatever. And he's like, look, like the Sabbath was made for man, for man's benefit. Man wasn't made to obey the Sabbath perfectly so that it could honor Sabbath. It was for the man. There's a certain freedom that we have. And that freedom, as long as we exercise it with respect towards God, is a beautiful thing that we get to have. And so let's not approach these types of things with fear. As I think about it, there's this other passage in the Old Testament where this guy Naaman, you've probably heard 1,000 sermons on this, and I have too. And recently I heard one where I thought of it in a different way. And the pastor was talking about how, Naaman's got leprosy, and he's this really powerful guy, and he hears that if he goes to Israel, maybe they can heal him. And the king of Israel is all freaked out because he can't do it. And then Elisha, the prophet's like, send him to me, I'll take care of it. He ends up healing him. And this guy Naaman comes to like God. And it's like, surely he is the one true God. But Elisha, I've got this problem. When I go back to my home country, I have to go into the temple of other gods. And I have to like help my boss in his worship. And I'm feeling like guilt. Like, can I be forgiven of that? And Elisha just says, simply, yeah, I mean, you might think he would say, no, you can't go in there. You can't do this. Here are the black and white rules. And Elisha says, go in peace. Go in peace. Isn't that interesting? So in our faith, in life, we have to wrestle with things at times, but don't approach it with fear. Do your research, pay attention to your conscience, but just know that God's bigger than all this, and you don't have to be afraid. All right, my friends, thanks for watching Ask a Pastor. We would love to have you subscribe so that when a new one comes out, it gets sent right to you. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us.